Please like and subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates.
Hi, I'm Jim Hanlon, W8KGI, and at this point in time a retired electrical engineer. I'd like to share an experience that I had in the summers of 1956, 57, and 58 when I worked as a summer relief engineer at WCPO TV in Cincinnati, which was a first generation black and white television station. And those were the days when television was a bit different than it is now. WCPO was the third station out of the three major network stations in Cincinnati to sign on the air. We came on in 1949. Our studio, our transmitter, and everything else was located on one of the hills in Cincinnati, where we had quite an antenna tower over our parking lot. We initially started off as a Dumont network affiliate, but the Dumont network didn't last very long. By the time I got there, we were an ABC network affiliate. TV in those days didn't stay on 24 hours a day. We signed on at 6:30 in the morning. We ran quite a bit of live programming all during the day, in contrast to folks now who run the network almost all day. And we went off the air in the evening around midnight when the film and projector ran out. We usually picked up the network somewhere around 4 in the afternoon with ABC, with the Mickey Mouse Club, and ran until perhaps 10 o'clock or so at night when we put on local news and then went to the film afterwards. Our station was equipped with first generation RCA video equipment, everything from the sync generators and the cameras to the transmitter and the remote gear. Our audio gear was a Western Electric audio board. The reason I got the job was because when I graduated from high school, I had a first-class radio telephone operator's permit, thanks to my radio club experience in high school. So I was eligible to hire on as a summer relief engineer from 1956 to 1958 while I was waiting to go to Ohio State, and then for the first 2 years while I was in Ohio State as an electrical engineering student. What I'll be showing you here is a series of 35 millimeter slides that either I or my older brother, who also worked as a summer relief engineer, took during the summers that I was there, and I dug them out recently and put them into this presentation. The jobs that I did as a summer engineer were determined by the National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians, the NABET union, to be almost all of the engineering jobs that were done in the station. The union insisted that we summer hires, who were there to give the normal engineering staff time to go on vacation, they insisted that we summer hires be allowed to do all of the engineering jobs there. So I had to come up to speed pretty quickly. And these are the various jobs that I held. The video engineer was the fellow who tuned up all the cameras and made sure that the pictures that I saw on a 10-inch monitor sitting in front of me were looking good on a 21-inch TV set at home. And I did all the video switching for the cameras and the network and the film chain and so forth. Also, the audio engineer was in charge of all the mics and ETs and the audio from the network and the film chain. And he also kept the station log. I was the cameraman, and the cameramen set up things in the studio ahead of time. So I was setting mics and lights and things of that sort. I ran the film chain, which could be either a very boring job or bedlam when I was in the middle of a station break. I did not act as the transmitter engineer, except for one notable occasion when we had a gully washer rainstorm and lightning hit the antenna, and we were off the air and for everything but the FM broadcast transmitter. So the guys put me on the FM transmitter, and I acted as engineer and also announcer for a little while everybody else tried to fix the TV station and get back on the air. We also did remote broadcasts, and I ran audio and camera principally on the remotes. And we had a maintenance shift that came in when we went off the air at midnight and stuck around until 8 in the morning to fix everything that went wrong during the day. This is a shot from the parking lot up the antenna tower. It was 545 feet tall, and I assure you I didn't climb that thing while I was there. This is what the video engineer's console looks like, or looked like at that point in time. You'll see, for example, over here on the far right, in terms of the monitors, is a monitor that shows what was coming in either from the network or from one of our remote broadcasts. We patched either one of those in there. The next panel over, to the left of that, just above the engineer's arm here, are the controls for a special effects amplifier, which was the thing that we did split screens and wipes and things of that sort with. And the panel to the left of that, the monitor to the left of that here, is the special effects amplifier output monitor. The next monitor over, above the engineer's hands, is the signal that we were sending to the transmitter. That's basically our on-the-air monitor. To the left of that is a monitor for the film chain, and then cut off on the picture is one monitor that was for camera 2, and then beyond that was the monitor for camera 1. In addition to the picture screens, you also see a small oscilloscope screen underneath the pictures, and that was called an A-scope. It allowed us to look at the electronic signal that was coming out of that particular signal source and adjust it for gain and black level and so forth. Here's the audio engineer's position. The audio engineer and the director, who sat to the audio engineer's right, were up on a pedestal above the floor level, and the video engineer was right down below that pedestal on the right-hand side of this picture. But you'll see what the audio board looks like. We had incoming lines from about 6 different microphones that we could patch in, and also incoming audio from the film chain, from the network, and from remote sources, and a couple of gain controls on the far right of the board for 2 channels which were going out. We used one of the channels to feed the transmitter and the other channel to feed monitoring in the control room. When we were checking out microphones and queuing up turntables and so forth, you'll see one of the turntables here to the right of the engineer's elbow. We had 3 turntables, and that was our only source really of recorded audio beyond the soundtrack and the film chain. Tape recorders were around at that point in time, but they were just reel-to-reel. We didn't have cassettes or anything of that sort, nor did we, of course, have anything digital. So any recorded audio we had was basically off vinyl records. The audio board was fairly sophisticated for its day. It had 2 channels that we could switch to the transmitter, and also to the control room. Over the engineer's head, you see sort of a dark window. That was the announcer's booth, and he had an audio input to the board. And over on the right-hand side, beneath the clock, you'll see a doorway that went to Studio B. That was our smaller studio. This is the transmitter console. That's the job they didn't let me do. As a matter of fact, they didn't let the chief engineer play too many games with the transmitter either. He went in one day and was adjusting the tuning on the transmitter amplifiers, and managed to blow out the final amplifier tube. And so they got him out of the way and switched the amplifier off, and just went with the driver to the antenna and replaced the tube. And the next day he came in and did the same thing, and the day after that he did the same thing. So on the fourth day, the guy said the three tubes sitting on top of that console with little signs on them: day 1, day 2, day 3, and then they had another sign that said day 4 with a question mark. And the chief engineer didn't mess with the transmitter after that. This is the film chain, and this was a job that was either boredom or all hands to the pumps. You'll see two projectors here. The one on the left has the number 2 on it. The one on the right was projector number 1. They're both Bell & Howell 16mm movie projectors. And you can see that both of them have rather small reels of film on them. They were probably 30-second or 1-minute commercials. And while one of them was running, the engineer was very likely threading the next bit of video, which might have been a feature film or whatever, into the other one. And you got so you could load those cameras in about 20 seconds. In the center, you see two drums up on top here. These were 35mm slides, and we could project 35mm slides down into the pickup camera. They picked up directly. Below the slide projector, you'll see something sort of on a diagonal. That's a mirror that we swung so that we could project either motion picture camera number 1 or motion picture camera number 2 into the pickup camera. And as I said, this job could get really hairy, especially when we were running one video out of the projection room for commercials and station breaks for a local program, while at the same time we were running other video out of it for a network show that we were originating and sending to ABC. We did that on Sunday afternoons. Here's the director's perch, and that's right beside the audio board. The audio board you'll see on the far right-hand side of the picture, and this is the view from the video engineer's standpoint. You'll even see the head of the video engineer down here in the bottom of the picture. This particular director was an interesting fellow. His name was Wally Dunham, and Wally was a Korean War veteran, and he had been taken prisoner by the North Koreans, excuse me. I'm sure that he suffered from what we'd call these days post-traumatic stress syndrome, but he could be a little dark sometimes. You can see by the way that the director is wearing headphones because he's in communication with the prop men and the cameramen out in the studio, and also with the film chain engineer, in addition to talking to the video engineer and the audio engineer here in the control room. This is another one of the directors, Dick Seifert. Dick was a much happier guy. Here's one of the first shows that we put on the air in the morning, As you can see, it was about 9:15 in the hour-long breakfast show, and the fellow on the phone there and holding a fishing rod is a guy whose on the air name was Bud Chase. Off the air, he was known as Arthur Churvis, but he was one of the station personalities who did a number of things, including a kids show in the afternoon that I'll show you some more pictures of later on. We did quite a bit of live programming in the morning. This was one of the shows that we put on hour long at 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Uncle Al. Al had a bunch of mommies in the greater Cincinnati area who would bring their preschool kids up, and we would do a very entertaining show for the boys and girls. You can see Al there with a captain's hat on, and some of the kids doing a dance number, I guess, in the ground above, in front of Al. Over on the right-hand side, you will see me running camera 2. I think my brother, Bob, took this picture. I'm not too sure. But I'll tell you now, that particular camera was an RCA TK30, I believe. It was a remote camera. You can tell by the tripod dolly on it, which is collapsible. And we had 2 remote cameras and 2 studio cameras. We happened to have the remote cameras on in the studio this particular day because we tried to equalize the amount of time on each of the sets of the cameras. The cameraman usually is watching the picture from the viewfinder that you see above my head there. It's about a 5-inch screen, and with that we're supposed to get everything in focus and set properly. And of course, on the left-hand side of the picture, you'll see some of the prop men getting ready for commercials and also running the boom mic. And there are pretty hot lights at the top of the picture illuminating the scene. Here's the director for the Uncle Al show, Mike Tangi. He was a real character. He used to do a lot of character voices for the puppets and the commercials and everything else on the show, and that's why he has the microphone in front of him. He would call into the studio through the studio intercom system, and Mike was really the life of the party when it came to running that show. And here's another shot of the Uncle Al show. The lady that you see in the picture there is Al's wife, Wanda Lewis. Al was Al Lewis, and Wanda was known as either Captain Wendy or Captain Windy on this show. Also, beside my head there on the right side, you'll see a big clown puppet that used to be part of the show. And right in the foreground of the picture, you'll see a couple of the mommy's heads. Here's the 10 o'clock show. It was a half an hour of what we would call hillbilly music in Cincinnati at that point in time, called the Cornhuskers Jamboree. The guys who played and sang on this show were a bunch of local fellas who showed up and worked for nothing except for the glory of being on television, or a few of them were prop men. This is the opening shot of the show. The cameraman started with a tight shot on the violin player, and the violin player had some gold teeth, and he would grin and flash his teeth, and it was quite a show. You'll see again that we have the remote cameras. That dolly was kind of a wide space thing, and it was a bit of a job to haul it around, but we managed to do it pretty well. Here's a a couple of the engineers relaxing and having lunch on a couch in the transmitter room. And here's another show that we ran during the noontime. As you can see, we did a lot of live television at that point in time. The gal here who was on the air was again Wanda Lewis, and she was doing a cooking show. And the fellow who's eyeing the barbecue over there was Bud Chase. He looked like he was hungry. You can also see the camera there. It's got 3 lenses mounted on a turret in the front of the camera, and the lens on top is the one that's on the air. That's a 50 millimeter lens, and that was the, shall I say, normal lens that we would use, and it was easy to dolly shot on. The lens in the middle, which was actually on the far right hand side of the turret, is a 90, and the bottom lens is an 8-inch, which we used for close-up shots. There's a 4th position on the turret that we put a blank on so that we could cut off the light going into the camera and save the pickup tube when we were actually on the air. And this is our afternoon show at 3 o'clock. From 1 until 3, we were up against Mother Ruth Lyons on Channel 4, and Mother Ruth had all of the viewers in Cincinnati, so we usually ran an old movie. Mother was sort of the Oprah Winfrey of Cincinnati, and you didn't compete with her. But this particular show was the Our Gang comedy show. We used to run Laurel and Hardy movies and Our Gang comedy movies, and have live segments as well where kids from town, normally say somewhat older grade school kids to junior high kids, that's what the show was pretty much pitched to, and they would come up and take part in the live portion of the show. Bud Chase is over on the right hand side of the picture, dressed as String Bean, who was the MC for the show, and his sidekick in the black jacket is over on the left, and the contestant there in the isolation booth was doing some kind of quiz show. This show was a lot of fun. Many commercials on the show that paid much money, so we could do a lot of things with it. And one day I even got together with a prop man, and I convinced them to hang the set of the show upside down from the ceiling. And I switched the scans into cameras, so that instead of scanning the picture from top to bottom, they scanned the picture from bottom to top. And so when you looked in the camera, the set looked normal. But when String Bean walked into the picture, it looked like he was walking on the ceiling. And when he saw what we'd done, he got a big kick out of it and ran the whole show that way. So we had a lot of fun with that crazy show. Here's another one of the engineers. He's walking out of the prop room area, and it looks like he was looking for something about so big, at least the way he was holding his hands. But that prop room had all sorts of amazing things in it. Everything we needed for commercials and all of the background for the sets. We had an art department that did an awful lot of background that got slapped up on basically flats behind the sets. So for a black and white television station, we had a lot of stuff. This is one of the shows that we used to do on a Saturday afternoon. It was a teenage dance party. And as you can see, an awful lot of the kids from town would dress up in their their best dresses or their suits and ties and come out and dance for a couple of hours while we played the top dance music, usually on 45 RPM records for them. You can see sort of in the top center of the picture the MC for the show. On the air he was known as Happy Pappy. His name was Miles Fullen, and there's one of the engineers running camera in front of him. There was also another camera, and you can see just a shadow of it over here on the right-hand top side. That was up on a pedestal, and between the floor camera and the pedestal camera, we shot a lot of pictures of the kids dancing. And here is our remote bus. This was a 1947 vintage RCA remote bus, and I'll show you a picture of the inside of it in just a few slides. But basically the area in the back where you see the window, was the area where the on-the-air video engineer and director sat, and the rest of the crew was out doing their thing somewhere else in the remote location. That's a nice 57 Chevy, by the way, in the lower right-hand corner. And here we are on a remote. This was a remote for the dance party that we did during the summer. And we are out at Moonlight Gardens, which is the open-sided, great big old dance pavilion at the Coney Island Amusement Park, which was down along the Ohio River in Cincinnati. The big bands of the day used to come and play at this Moonlight Gardens in the evening. And Coney Island was a great place to go for a date. You had all of the amusement park rides, and they had the world's largest recirculating swimming pool there. Pool was so big that the lifeguards paddled around the deep end in a rowboat, and you could go and ride the rides and go for a swim. And there was a nice and not terribly expensive restaurant that you could go for dinner, and then you could go dancing afterwards. At any rate, on Saturday afternoon we used to do the dance party as a remote from Moonlight Gardens. And this is one day when I was on the remote crew. By the way, the two cars that you see there, I think, are 1958 model. I believe the one with the brown hood is a Chevy, and the one with the white hood is a Buick. So that would date 58. Here's the inside of the remote bus, facing the back of the bus. The fellow sitting there was the remote supervisor, video engineer, and director, and he's got 7-inch screens in front of him. The two camera monitors are the ones on the right and the center, and the on-the-air monitor, which shows the video that we were sending back to the station, is over his left-hand shoulder. And then there's a TV set up on the shelf above him that's actually picking up the signal from the station, so we knew when the station was taking breaks and running commercials and things of that sort. Here's Happy Pappy again, doing his MC job at the dance party of Moonlight Gardens. And another remote camera on the right-hand side. Here's a bit longer shot of the dance floor with the cameraman up on the platform camera, and I particularly like some of the girls' outfits. The girl, for example, here on the far right has a hoop skirt on. Those were the dresses in those days. And here's the audio engineer position, and I think that's me running audio. at this particular dance party. We used to set the audio engineer up at a table on the side in Moonlight Gardens, so we didn't have to cram the audio gear into the remote bus. And this may have been the day that I had a little trouble. We were playing 45 RPM records, and you can see one just above my sleeve there on my left arm. And we used to cue the records up on 45 RPM disc players. And that particular day, the player was in the sun, and the sun was pretty hot, and it actually softened the record on me. And I had the tone arm sitting on the record, queued up, ready to go, and the record warped. And when I set it on the air, the needle started to bounce up and down on the record. It started to skip. So I very quickly pulled some coins out of my pocket and put them on top of the tone arm so that the tone arm wouldn't bounce off the record, and so I could stay on the air with it. You had to be resourceful when you were working that job. And here's another shot of the platform camera, and again you see some of the hoop skirts and the outfits the kids were wearing those days. Must have been a warm day because the guys were wearing short sleeve shirts, as was the cameraman. We were all black and white, by the way. In addition to not having audio tape, we didn't have videotape either, and this was a completely black and white station, and anytime we were on the air, we were right there. There was no recording and taking out goof. Went right out along with everything else. These are a few of the folks that I met while I was doing my engineering job. Over here on the left are the Everly Brothers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they were an early rock and roll group, and they came out to the station one summer afternoon to appear on the Air Gang Comedy Show to promote their show, and they were basically pimply-faced teenagers and a couple of nice kids. Over on the right are Pancho and Cisco. Cisco was the Cisco Kid, and Pancho was his sidekick, and they had a Western cowboy show that they used to put on film and that our station ran. And one day Pancho actually came up to the station and appeared on the air on the Air Gang show. And I was running camera that day, and Pancho was for real. His name was Leo Carrillo, and he was tanned and scarred and rough and ready. Nobody did his stunts. He did everything himself. And you can see that 45 6-shooter in his right hand there. He had that in a holster on his hip when he was talking to String Bean on the air. And String Bean asked him if it was loaded. And Pancho grinned and he said, "Sure, amigo." And he pulled it out and he fired it off in the studio, our little Studio B. Well, it wasn't loaded with regular ammo, it was loaded with blanks. But boy, I'll tell you, that was loud. And I couldn't hear anything that the director was saying to me through my earphones for a couple of minutes after he fired that thing off. This memorializes some of the characters I met and who were on the air at some of the shows at CPO. Millie Frankie was the lady who played organ or piano for the Uncle Al shows and some of the other shows that we needed musical background for. And she also played at the Gaiety Theater in Cincinnati, which was the local striptease theater. And Millie was a great gal. She was everybody's mother. And she looked out in particular for the college kids who were running engineering. But everything Millie played started off with da 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 da, and then she'd play the tune. And I think that was how she played everything at the Gaiety as well. Paul Hodges was another character. Paul was a friendly drunk who used to do a show either from the Cincinnati Railroad Station or the Greyhound bus terminal called Are You Arrivin' or Leavin'? He knew the two main streets in just about every town in the United States, and he would accost some poor traveler and ask them where they were coming from or where they were going to. And if somebody said, I'm going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, he'd say, well, how's everything at Central and Broad Street? And he'd give them a number 2 lead pencil with his advertiser's name on it. And Paul also used to do a commercial for a big box furniture store on Sunday evenings. And I was running camera for Paul's commercial one Sunday night when he showed up about 3 sheets to the wind. And he normally had a riser with pictures of the furniture that he was selling. And I'd start off with a 50 millimeter lens on a wide shot and get Paul and the riser, and then he'd say, come on in, Lindsay, and let's show the folks what we've got. And the evening that I'm thinking of, I convinced Paul to start the picture with his pants off and just with his polka dot boxer shorts on. And he did it, and Ty Rice came on and he said, hi there, Lindsay. I lost my pants in a shady furniture deal, but you won't lose your pants if you come down to Sun Furniture. Come on in, Lindsay, and let's show the folks what we've got. He sounded a little like W.C. Fields. So Paul was crazy. He'd do anything. Then there was Harris Rosedale. Harris used to do a dancing show on Saturday mornings. He had a dance studio in town, and he used to convince the moms to enroll their kids, mostly little girls, in these dance studios by telling them that he could get them on television. And Harris would come up with this bunch of little girls, mainly in tutus, and we'd show them dancing on the air. And Harris wore a toupee, and he used to look in the camera before the show started and adjust his toupee and ask Mike Tangi, who was the director for the show, Uncle Al's director, how he looked. And Mike would open the intercom of the studio and say, you look just fine, Harris. And all the kids would laugh and giggle and get relaxed, and the show would go on the air. Then there was a gentleman by the name of Maurice Gorodeski, and he was a chef from the local Maisonette restaurant in Cincinnati, which was a 3-star French restaurant. He would come up on Saturday around noontime and run a cooking show for half an hour. And I was running a camera on his show one day, and he was making escargot, snails. And I've got to tell you, the snails didn't look too appetizing on black and white television. And all the crew who were on the intercom, the prop men, the cameramen, the director, they were commenting on how the snails didn't look particularly appetizing. Well, normally at the end of the show, I had the final shot, and I would be doing a close-up on the dish that the chef had prepared, and there'd be the rest of the crew gathered around the camera, and when the tally lights went out, they would descend upon the food and snarf it all up. But that particular day, they convinced themselves that things didn't taste good or didn't look good, so they stayed away. And I was the only person to the crew left in the studio after the tally lights went out. And I had a very nice lunch that day of escargot in melted butter with drawn butter with all the seasoning, and boy was it good. So anyway, and then there was another gentleman by the name of Bob Braun, whom the crew usually called Boo Brain. Bob was not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but I've got to hand it to him. He worked very hard. He used to go to all the neighborhood summer parties and show up and make an appearance, and he got quite a following among the folks around Cincinnati. And he would do a number of the shows on the air as well, and kept a lot of people entertained. Okay, these were some of the funny things we did on the air, or funny things that happening. I already told you about the escargot that I got that one particular Saturday, and also hanging the set from the ceiling on the Our Comedy Show. Another thing that I did for the Our Comedy Show involved the special effects amplifier. It was first generation, and we hadn't figured out how to do things like keying one camera picture, say with a person on it, into the other picture. But I was fooling around with the special effects amplifier, and I figured out how to make the signal from a camera key itself into another video picture. We had a fellow from the Humane Society bring a little dog up to the show, and he would show it on the air and try to convince some of the folks who were watching to call in and volunteer to adopt the dog. And while we were on the air with the Laurel and Hardy movie, the dog was just relaxing and sitting over by one of the gray curtains beside the wall, and I managed to adjust things so that the dog would key himself into the film picture. Well, I called the director's attention to it and showed him what I had on the special effects monitor, and he thought it was kind of cool, so he told me to put it on the air, which I did, of course. And then he opened the intercom and told the folks in the studio to look at the monitors and to see the dog in the picture. At that point in time, Laurel and Hardy were in a scene where they were at a bar, and it looked as though this little dog was sitting on the bar as well. And Stringbean got the idea real quick, and he ran on to the picture in front of the camera and started to chase the dog around. And it looked like a little man was running around chasing the little dog around on the bar while Laurel and Hardy were having their drinks and doing their thing in the film. And that worked out so well that the station figured out how to key pictures of people into other pictures, and wound up doing it for things like weather forecasts and things of that sort that are very common these days on the air. The next one down, Splish Splash, I Was Taking a Bath. It's a popular top 40s kind of tune back in the day, and the song started off with a fella taking a bath and then going next door to the bathroom where there was a party going on in the living room. And we did this as part of a pantomime hit parade show that we were originating and feeding to the ABC network on a Sunday afternoon. Well, Lee Fogel was the guy's name, who was Stringbean's sidekick, and Lee was a real trooper. When we rehearsed this particular number, we had a bathtub full of warm water with some suds on top, and Lee would start off the number in the bathtub, and then get out, and he had swim trunks on, and he would pull a towel around himself and go into the next room where there was dancing going on. But when we went on the air live for the ABC network to do this particular number, the doggone prop man had replaced the warm water in the tub with cold water, and they poured a lot of ice cubes into it. So it was ice cold. And poor Lee had to get into the tub, and it was about 20 seconds worth of number while he was in the tub, freezing to death and shivering, but doggone, he got through it, and then went on for the rest of the number in the next room. Oh dear. Also, I'll tell you about something that you may have heard of. There was a Blue Banana Award that used to be mentioned mainly on the network shows now and then for a particularly good prank that the staff or whomever pulled on a TV show. And I think I know where it came from. One of my classmates at Ohio State was George Brown Jr. And George Brown Sr., George Harold Brown, was the vice president of RCA in charge of their laboratory in Princeton, New Jersey, where they were doing development work for color television. RCA developed the original color TV system that the FCC finally adopted for use in the United States. And the FCC was coming out to Princeton to view the RCA color system. They had actually approved a CBS color system, but it required a spinning disc to be positioned in front of the receiver picture tube, because it broadcast one basically black and white picture while a blue filter was in front of the tube, and then they would swing a red filter in front of the tube and project a second black and white picture, and then spin a, I think, yellow filter in front of the tube while they were projecting yet a third black and white picture. As you can imagine, that was a bit of a mechanical monster. And it also wouldn't have worked very well for a large picture because the disc would have gotten terribly big. So they were viewing the RCA system, which was compatible with the black and white system, and which just used one picture tube. Anyway, RCA was busy at their Princeton lab tuning up the cameras to demonstrate their system to the FCC, who were coming out the next day. And Dr. Brown went out to the control room and studio where the guys were working at lunchtime of the day before the FCC came out, just to see how things were going. And he noticed that while the crew was out at lunch, they had the cameras open, and they were tuning up on a bowl of fruit in the studio. And he was a bit of a trickster, and he went to their prop room and got a bottle of blue tempera paint, and went out to the bowl of fruit, picked up the banana in the bowl, and painted it blue, and put it back in the bowl. Well, he left, and finally at the end of the day, he came back to the control room and studio to see how things were going. And the engineers who were trying to get the cameras adjusted were sweating bullets, and he said, "What's wrong, guys?" And he said, "Whatever we do, that damn banana keeps coming out blue." And they had never actually looked at the banana to see what color it was. So that's the origin, I think, of the Blue Banana Award. Okay, well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. This is the last of the slides that I took, and that's the film chain saying that this is the end. And I hope you've enjoyed my story about TV in 1956 through 58.
Please like and subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates.